The story kicks off with a group of adventurers facing a fearsome S-ranked forest dragon. The dragon's fire breath causes chaos, and the adventurers are forced to flee. Meanwhile, in a peaceful field, we meet a young farmer named Al. He's happily tending to his crops, satisfied with how well everything is growing. After harvesting, Al gets an alert from his status window. All his farming skills have maxed out, reaching level 10. His friend, Testa the fisherman, joins him, amazed at Al's accomplishment. Testa can't help but feel a bit jealous, especially since Al has even maxed out his fishing skill, a feat Testa hasn't even achieved himself. Suddenly, Al gets a special option to evolve and integrate his skills. Curious, he accepts, gaining the title Nature Lover. Al is not sure what this means, but Testa notices something shocking. Al now has 65,000 status points, with an attack of over 73,000 and a defense of 45,000. They're both stunned, but Al remembers he needs to get to the market. On his way to the royal capital to sell his crops, Al comes across the adventurers, still struggling against the dragon. Without thinking much, he throws a carrot hoping to distract the dragon. To everyone's shock, the carrot hits, and the dragon explodes with a single blow. The adventurers are left speechless, while Al, equally confused, hurries on his way. The adventurers only catch a glimpse of his retreating figure. Al finally reaches the royal capital, Magus. While entering the gate, he notices a girl being kidnapped by a hooded man. Without hesitation, Al jumps in, saving the girl. The man attacks Al with a knife, but Al easily disarms and defeats him. The guards arrest the man, and the girl thanks Al for his help. You can thank him some other way if you know what I mean. As a bell rings, Al, not wanting to be late, quickly rushes off. The girl asks for his name, but Al is already speeding away. He delivers his crops at the market, but as he's about to leave the city, he's stopped by the guards. Al starts to worry he might be in trouble, but the girl he saved appears, introducing herself as Phallis, the princess of the capital. Nervous at first, Al tries to stay calm as Phallis tells him to treat her casually. She offers him a job serving the royal family, but in his mind, Al just wants her to fuck off and let him get on with his day. Instead, he politely declines, explaining he can't take on such responsibility. Phallis, not giving up, sweetens the deal by offering him a massive field near the capital, over 33,000 square meters. Al, puzzled by her persistence, asks why she's going to such lengths to recruit him. She reveals it's because of how easily he defeated the hooded man, who had a strength of over 500. Curious, Al asks what the average strength of a person is. Phallis explains that most people have a strength around 50, adventurers average about 130, knights reach up to 600, and legendary heroes hit 1,000. Phallis asks to see Al's status, but knowing he can't reveal it, Al dodges the question. Just then, the adventurers return, reporting that the forest dragon has been defeated, but they don't know who did it, only that there was a carriage. Phallis begins to suspect it was Al, but while they're distracted, he quietly slips away. Phallis' recruitment efforts are interrupted when a guard informs her that she's needed at the palace. A massive swarm of monsters, including orcs, dragons, and golems, is approaching the capital. This news shocks the king, as they have a peace pact with the demons after the Demon King's defeat by the hero. Officer Cecil suggests that not all demons were happy with the peace, particularly Romeo Vanded, the Demon King's first general. He suspects Romeo wants revenge now that the hero is gone and advises the king to flee for his safety. Reluctantly, the king agrees, urged by his soldiers to survive. Meanwhile, Al returns home, accidentally breaking his door with his newfound strength. Exhausted from the day's events, he's interrupted by Testa, who warns him that a monster army is nearby and they need to evacuate. Al immediately worries about his crops and rushes to his field, relieved to see they're safe. However, he realizes the monsters are headed straight for the capital. Although he wants no part in it, the thought of losing his crops spurs him into action. Back at the palace, the king and Phallis find themselves cornered. Suddenly, Cecil reveals his true identity as Romeo, the demon general who had been deceiving them all along. Romeo reveals his plan to pose as the king, using transformation magic, and rule the kingdom from the shadows. He attacks with dark magic, but the king creates a barrier, struggling to hold it as Phallis assists him. Despite their efforts, Romeo's second attack breaks the barrier. Just as he prepares to finish them off, Al appears, stopping the attack with his plowing skill, disrupting the ground and scattering the monsters. Romeo is curious about Al's identity, but Al brushes it off, claiming he's just a simple farmer. Romeo leaps behind him, but Al easily catches his blade, and throws him aside. Impressed, Romeo decides to use his full power, absorbing energy from nearby monsters and transforming into his true form. Fally's checking his status, sees that Romeo is level 78 with a strength of over 5,000. She urges Al to run, but instead, Al counters Romeo's attack with a single punch, defeating him in one blow. The monsters are left in disbelief as Al runs off. Back at the palace, the king thanks Al for saving them, but Al insists he only acted to protect his crops. The king offers Al any title he desires, but Al refuses, staying firm in his wish to remain a farmer. As a reward, Fallis grants Al the 33,000 square meter field she promised, on the condition that he registers as an adventurer to help the kingdom from time to time. Al agrees, but when he goes to check out the field, he discovers it's nothing but a barren wasteland, realizing he's been tricked by Fallis. The next day, Al explores the capital with Fallis, and he's amazed by the wide variety of foods available. He asks her how she can walk around so casually without being recognized, and Fallis reveals that she has a maid standing in for her at the palace plus a magical hairpin that hides her identity. She takes Al to the Adventurers Guild, where they are immediately greeted by the guild master, who's heard rumors of Al's incredible strength. The guild master leads them to the reception desk, where they meet Helen, the guild's secretary. Suddenly, Al's stomach growls loudly, so they pause to get him something to eat. Helen prepares a delicious pie for him, and once he's satisfied, they continue the registration process. When asked why he wants to become an adventurer, Al explains that he's only doing it as part of his deal with Fallis. Just then, the adventurers from the previous day, Jake, Luke, and Lania approach, thanking Al for defeating the S-ranked forest dragon. The entire guild is stunned, and Al feels a bit embarrassed by all the attention. The adventurers wish him luck and suggest they go hunting together, but Al sighs, imagining how that would take him away from his beloved crops. Al tells Helen he's interested in trying out a quest, so she explains the adventurer ranking system from F rank all the way up to double S rank. Since Al is new, he can only take on easy quests for now. She suggests a simple task: collect 10 herbs from the Grim Forest. Helen advises him to get some equipment, as there could be monsters in the forest, but Al admits he's too poor to afford any. Hearing this, Helen offers him her old cloak, which is enhanced with magical defenses. Al is reluctant to accept, but Helen insists and helps him put it on. As she adjusts the cloak, she seems mesmerized, as though Al reminds her of someone. Wishing him luck, she sends him off, but all Al can think about is returning to his farm. Al heads to the Grim Forest and quickly gathers the herbs. While searching, he finds a peculiar black scale and wonders what kind of monster might have dropped it. Before he can investigate further, a female orc appears and pounces on him, intent on Netflix and chilling with him. Fortunately, Jake arrives just in time to save him, defeating the orc. Al thanks Jake and asks if he knows anything about the black scale. Jake mentions rumors of a black dragon, but doubts its truth, as black dragons typically live in the highlands, not forests. Lania suggests the scale could fetch a good price. Suddenly, an overwhelming aura fills the air, freezing them in place. To their horror, a black dragon covered in darkness emerges, walking right past them. Al is terrified but manages to check its status, shocked by its monstrous stats. Nearby, a girl is caught in the chaos, but as this happens, Helen wakes up from a nightmare. The next morning, Helen's mother notices she doesn't look well. Helen admits that she's suffering from memory loss, unable to recall what happened after work the previous day. Her mother suggests she take some time off to rest. Meanwhile, Al returns to the guild to report his encounter with the black dragon. Meeting with the guild master, Al reveals that the dragon's strength is over 230,000. Based on its appearance, they suspect the dragon is none other than the evil dragon, Ouroboros. Helen is particularly shaken by the news. Al shows them the black scale he found, and Helen is horrified. She remembers a tragic moment from her past, her brother running away and being killed by the dragon. The memory is too much for her, and she faints. Al waits anxiously for news of Helen's condition. Her foster mother reassures him that she will be okay, and she also recognizes the cloak Al is wearing. She reveals that Helen is her foster daughter, whom she found 15 years ago by a lake, wearing a similar cloak. At the time, Helen had lost all her memories except for her name. The foster mother believes Helen may have a connection to Ouroboros. Determined to help, Al heads to the library to learn more about Ouroboros, but he can't find any useful information. He tries to access old reports from 15 years ago, around the time Helen was found, but the librarian informs him that those records are restricted to higher-ranked adventurers. Al tries to plead with her, but she refuses. At that moment, Thalys appears, surprising the librarian. Using her authority as princess, she helps Al gain access to the restricted records. Together, they review the damage reports from Honora Village, where Helen was found. Al discovers that 15 years ago, the entire village was destroyed and black scales were found at the scene. However, the incident had been covered up as the evil dragon was believed to be dead. If Ouroboros has somehow revived, the entire world could be in danger. The next day, Al and Thalys travel to the ruins of Honora Village. The village is still in a completely destroyed state. As they explore, Al suddenly hears a voice. Following it, they arrive at a grave where a boy appears. Wearing the same cloak as Al, confused, Thalys can't see or hear the boy, and Al realizes he's a ghost. The boy introduces himself as Lay, relieved to finally find someone who can see him. Lay also notices that Al is wearing the same cloak as him. Al mentions that he got the cloak from Helen, and Lay is glad to hear she's doing well. Lay reveals that he is her brother and explains that the cloak was a gift from their father, enchanted with powerful magic. Curious, Al drapes the cloak over Thalys, which causes her to panic and blush at being so close to him. However, this allows her to finally see Lay, and she freaks out at the sight of the ghost. Lay goes on to explain that Helen was the only survivor from their village and warns that she's in danger. A flashback transports them 15 years into the past. Helen calls Lay for lunch while he's practicing with a sword, but he trips and falls. Helen frets over him, but Lay insists that he wants to become a warrior. Suddenly, dark clouds roll in, and fire begins to rain down from the sky. They rush back to their village, only to find it in ruins ablaze. A black dragon descends, roaring ferociously. A brave child steps up and throws a rock at the beast, which only enrages the dragon. The dragon, able to speak, mocks the boy's defiance, feeding off the villagers' fear, and declares it will destroy anyone who dares hope. The dragon gathers dark energy in its mouth, preparing to obliterate the boy. Helen and Lay watch from afar, powerless. Realizing there's nothing they can do, they decide to flee. As they run, the dragon soars overhead, tracking them. It delights in their fear and pursues them, breathing fire as it closes in. Exhausted, Helen collapses and tells Lay to leave her behind. The dragon lands behind her, ready to devour her soul, but is interrupted when Lay hurls his sword at its eye. Though briefly blinded, the dragon regenerates instantly and turns its attention to Lay. The dragon impales Lay with its teeth, and Helen rushes to her fallen brother. Sensing her anguish, the dragon grows even stronger, feeding on her despair. It chooses to spare Helen, vowing to return after 15 years to destroy her home once more and torment her with emotional pain before devouring her soul. Lay, even in his final moments, swears to protect Helen, even in death. In response, the dragon binds his soul to the village, forcing him to witness her inevitable demise. With that, the dragon disappears and Lay fades away. Back in the present, Lay explains to Al that the dragon always spares one survivor to spread its legend and stoke fear, returning years later to kill that person and repeat the cycle. Lay begs Al to protect Helen, but Al is hesitant, knowing how powerful the dragon is. Lay then mentions that the dragon only consumed his soul after he fell into despair. He believes that if they can harness the feeling of hope, they can weaken the dragon. Lay asks Al to deliver a message to Helen, and Al races off, carrying Thalys along the way. Knowing time is short, since today marks exactly 15 years since the last attack, Al hurries as fast as he can despite Thalys protesting how undignified it is to be carried like a sack. She demands he carry her properly in his arms, but Al insists this is the quickest way. They make it back to the city just in time with no sign of the dragon yet. Thalys calls Al a brute for treating her so roughly, but is also impressed by his stamina. They part ways as Al goes to find Helen, and Thalys prepares the guards for the impending threat. Meanwhile, at the guild, Helen's mother goes to check on her, only to find her missing. Alone in the forest, Helen is soon confronted by the black dragon. It greets her, its return triggering the memories she had long repressed. Helen remembers that it was her fault Lay died. The dragon revels in reminding her how her actions caused her brother's death, making her responsible for the coming destruction of the city. Helen begs the dragon to spare the city, offering her life in exchange, but the dragon refuses, intent on wiping out everyone. Consumed by guilt, Helen considers ending her own life, but Al arrives just in time to stop her. She regains her senses, but the dragon attacks, knocking Al away. However, thanks to the enchanted cloak, Al survives the blow. The dragon is stunned that a human could withstand its power, but Al boldly declares he's not just any human. He's a farmer. Cringe ass. Helen pleads with him to run, but Al stands his ground, charging at the dragon and landing a punch square in its face. The dragon is shocked that a human was able to hurt it. The two engage in a fierce battle, with the dragon slashing at Al with its claws. Al lands another punch, but the dragon retaliates by unleashing a devastating stream of fire. Al is knocked back, and Helen, not wanting anyone else to suffer because of her, begs him to leave. But Al reassures her, telling her it's not her fault. He then relays the message from Lei, explaining that her brother never blamed her for his death. In fact, he was proud to protect her and wanted her to live a happy life. Hearing this, Helen finds hope, and the dragon's power begins to fade. Furious, the dragon dives at them in a final attempt to finish them off, but Al, now stronger with Helen's newfound hope, counters and defeats the dragon with a powerful punch. Finally, the threat is over. Al relaxes, but just as he does, Helen suddenly stabs him. Al, confused by Helen's sudden attack, reaches for a potion, but fumbles and drops it. Helen lunges at him again, and Al barely dodges. Trying to make sense of the situation, Al asks what's going on, but Helen rushes to finish him off. Suddenly, a wing gets in the way. It's the holy dragon Mirage. Mirage reveals that Helen is being possessed by the evil dragon. He heals Al and lends him his power, but the effort leaves Mirage collapsing from exhaustion. Before fading, the holy dragon tells Al that he's given him the power to purify the black dragon and save Helen. The evil dragon, confident that Al wouldn't risk harming Helen's body, laughs. But to his shock, Al immediately punches Helen, aiming to stop the dragon. The dragon is stunned, and Al can see in Helen's eyes that she's silently pleading for him to stop her. Helen briefly returns to her senses, but as Al helps her up, the evil dragon's soul bursts out of her and dives into Al, attempting to possess him. The dragon declares victory, but there's an unexpected issue, as inside Al's heart, there is only farming. The evil dragon, baffled by the simplicity of Al's mind, finds nothing to corrupt. Al's pure obsession with growing and harvesting crops leaves the dragon unable to take hold, and he is forcefully rejected from Al's body. Mirage, recovering slightly, uses the last of his strength to purify Al, shattering the evil dragon's soul once and for all. The holy dragon thanks Al before fading into a beam of light, leaving both Al and Helen unconscious. When Al wakes up, he finds himself back at the Adventurers Guild, where Phallis immediately hugs him, relieved that he's okay. Al asks about the dragons, and Helen explains that the evil dragon Ouroboros has been purified while the holy dragon has disappeared. Al checks on Helen, concerned after her possession, but she assures him she's fine. She even reveals that she gained the ability to transform her arms and legs into dragon claws as a result of the ordeal. Al is startled, initially worried she's still possessed, but Helen demonstrates full control over her new powers. She plans to use them for good, protecting others in the future. Helen then notices Phallis, and not recognizing her as the princess due to her magical hairpin, innocently asks about her relationship with Al. A bit flustered, Al nervously explains that they're childhood friends. Phallis plays along, though, almost revealing her true identity. Just then, the guild master bursts in with Jake, Luke, and Lamia. They're thrilled to see Helen safe, and even more impressed that Al defeated the evil dragon. They joke about how the palace will reward Al for such a heroic feat, with Phallis nearly slipping up about her royal connections as she promises a grand reward. A celebration ensues in honor of Al's victory. Luke teases Al for not drinking with them, but Phallis can read Al's thoughts and knows he's already worrying about harvesting his potatoes in the morning. She tells him to relax, urging him to enjoy the party. As the night goes on, Helen shows off her newfound dragon powers to the guild, and everyone celebrates the night away. The next morning, Testa arrives to help Al with his farm work, amazed by how Al manages to maintain not one, but 2 farms. While they work, Reeks the mailman arrives with a letter for Al. It's from his father, reminding him that they haven't seen him in a while and inviting him to visit. Al finds himself torn as he's swamped with quests from the guild. But as he walks through the capital, he passes by a tomato stand. The tomato's perfect shape and vibrant color catch his eye, and when he bites into one, he's blown away by the taste. Shocked, he demands to know who produced such incredible tomatoes. The shopkeeper explains that they come from a farm in a town called La Lucas, and the secret lies in a special fertilizer. Without hesitation, Al dashes off to the guild and tells Helen that he needs time off. Helen panics at first, but Al explains that he needs to visit La Lucas to see his family and investigate the tomatoes. He asks if some other adventurers can cover his quest while he's away. Helen reveals that she's also become an adventurer thanks to her dragon powers and offers to cover for him. As Al leaves the guild, he runs into Fallis, who is eager to join him on his next quest. When Al tells her about his plan to visit his parents, she gets excited and insists on tagging along, wanting to meet and thank his parents for raising such a strong warrior. Al tries to dissuade her, but Fallis is determined and he eventually just sprints away, unable to argue any longer. Al walks through the jungle, thrilled at the thought of finally seeing the famous tomatoes of La Lucas. But his journey is interrupted when a male orc appears. Remembering that male orcs are usually friendly towards other men, Al initially isn't worried. But he quickly realizes this one has different intentions as it wants to have protein time with him. Al runs for his life, but is caught by the persistent orc. Just when things seem dire, the orc is defeated by a mysterious young girl with blue hair.